The morning of December 8, 1941, dawned hot and humid in Manila, but the air was thick with tension. Paul Evan Pappy Gunn, 42 years old, stood on the tarmac at Wright Field, watching as Japanese aircraft G-3M Nell and G-4M Betty bombers escorted by Zero fighters unleashed their first bombs on Clark Field, just 50 miles north. The attack came only hours after Pearl Harbor, but in Philippine time, it was the start of the Pacific War for the islands. Gunn, a retired Navy chief petty officer turned civilian aviation entrepreneur, had been expecting trouble for months. Japan had been at war with China since 1937, occupied French Indochina in 1940, and now threatened the entire Western Pacific. The Philippines, America's largest overseas possession, were directly in the crosshairs. Gunn had arrived in the Philippines in late 1939 with his wife Clara Louise Polly Crosby and their 4 children, sons Paul Jr. and Nathaniel, daughters Julia and Barbara. After 21 years in the U.S., Navy enlisting as an aircraft mechanic in 1918, self-teaching himself to fly on surplus planes. Re-enlisting in 1923 as a naval aviation pilot, serving with Fighter Squadron 1B the Tar Fatters, and instructing at Pensacola, he retired to build a new life. He helped found Philippine Airlines PAL with 5 Beechcraft Model 18 twins, operating passenger, mail, and freight services across Luzon, the Visayas, and Mindanao. The business was modest but growing, short island-hopping flights, charters for businessmen and officials, and occasional cargo runs to remote plantations. Gunn loved the freedom, the open skies, the challenge of navigating typhoon seas and weather, the satisfaction of keeping an airline aloft in a developing nation. But as 1941 progressed, the war clouds darkened. U.S. forces in the Philippines under General Douglas MacArthur numbered about 31,000 American troops and 80,000 Filipino scouts and regulars, but air power was weak. The Far East Air Force had only about 277 aircraft, many obsolete P-35s and P-40s, and the Navy's Asiatic fleet was outgunned. Gunn, with his military background, kept a close on developments. He flew his Beechcrafts on routine routes, but he also volunteered for reconnaissance flights when asked, using his experience to spot Japanese ship movements in the South China Sea. When the bombs fell on December 8th, Gunn's planes were grounded under emergency orders. Nichols Field and Nielsen Field became chaotic, civilians fleeing, military personnel scrambling. Gunn immediately offered his services to the U.S. Army Air Forces. His Beechcrafts unarmed and armored, slow were not combat machines, but they could evacuate people. Over the next weeks, he flew multiple sorties, ferrying American dependents, nurses, and supplies from Manila to safer areas like Baton or even Mindanao. These flights were dangerous. Japanese Zeros patrolled the skies, and anti-aircraft fire dotted the horizon. Gunn flew low, using terrain masking, hugging rivers and jungles to avoid detection. His Navy training kicked in, precise navigation, fuel management, quick decisions under fire. By late December, Japanese landings had begun. On December 10th, General Masaharu Honma's 13th Army landed at Lingayen Gulf and Lomon Bay, pushing toward Manila. MacArthur declared Manila an open city on December 25th to spare it from bombardment, ordering a withdrawal to the Baton Peninsula and Corregidor. Gunn's family was still in Manila. Holly, a resilient woman who had endured Navy life with frequent moves, kept the children calm amid air raids and blackouts. But on January 2nd, 1942, Japanese troops entered the city. Within days, Allied civilians, Americans, British, Dutch, Australians were ordered to report for internment. The camp occupied the 60-acre grounds of the University of Santo Tomas, a historic Dominican university in Manila's Sampaloc district. High walls, guarded gates, and Japanese sentries turned the campus into a prison. Conditions worsened rapidly. By mid-1942, rations dropped to 1,000 calories a day or less, mostly rice gruel, watery soup, and wilted greens. Malnutrition led to beriberi, pellagra, and edema. Dysentery and malaria spread due to poor sanitation and contaminated water. The camp hospital, staffed by interned doctors and nurses, struggled with limited medicine. Japanese guards enforced roll calls, curfews, and rules against radios or escape attempts. Executions occurred for violations. Some internees were beheaded or shot. Rumors spread that if Allied invasion forces neared Manila, the camp would be liquidated. Holly, once healthy and active, began losing weight. The children suffered from chronic hunger and illness. Nathaniel contracted malaria. The younger children developed dysentery. Red Cross messages limited to 25 words were the only contact with the outside world, heavily censored. Gunn learned of the internment through escaped contacts and radio intercepts. The news devastated him. His family was suffering, and he was powerless to help directly. This personal agony became his driving force. In January 1942, he flew one of his most courageous missions, piloting an unarmed civilian plane loaded with medical supplies to Baton. Japanese fighters patrolled the route, and anti-aircraft guns ringed the peninsula. Gunn flew over the water, dodging patrols, dropped the cargo to troops fighting under General Edward King's command. He returned safely, earning the Distinguished Flying Cross for heroism in the face of enemy fire. As Baton held out, Gunn continued evacuation flights. But the situation was hopeless. On April 9, 1942, Baton fell after a brutal siege. 75,000 troops surrendered in the largest capitulation anew. As history, Gunn, now in danger of capture, joined the Royce mission. Authorized by President Roosevelt to boost morale and strike back, the mission involved 10 B-25 Mitchell bombers from the 3rd Bombardment Group, flown by veteran pilots including Gunn. Departing from Australia, they staged at Del Monte Field on Mindanao, then attacked Japanese airfields, shipping, and troop concentrations in the Visayas and Luzon. Gunn piloted one B-25, navigating through enemy airspace to bomb targets near Manila. The mission April 12 to 14, 1942 was a success, damage to airfields, morale boost for the Allies. But Gunn's plane took hits from flak and fighters. He crash-landed in a jungle clearing on Mindanao, surviving with bruises and cuts. In Australia, Allied forces regrouped. The 5th Air Force, under new Commander General George C. Kenny, appointed July 1942, faced the same problem. Japanese convoys reinforced New Guinea unopposed. High-altitude B-17 bombing missed ships. Low-level attacks were suicidal. Kenny needed new tactics. Gunn, commissioned as a captain in the Army Air Forces based on his experience, was assigned to the 3rd Bombardment Group. Gunn began experimenting with Douglas A-20 Havocs. The A-20 was fast 350 miles per hour, maneuverable, but carried a bombardier in a glass nose with light guns. Gunn's idea: turn it into a gunship. He salvaged 50 caliber Browning machine guns from wrecked P-39s and P-40s fighters to damaged to fly. Mounting four in the nose on a welded steel frame, he removed the bombardier position. The guns fired forward, synchronized to avoid hitting the propeller. The modification added weight forward each gun 64 pounds, plus 200 pounds of ammunition, shifting the center of gravity. Test flights were terrifying. The A-20 wanted to dive, struggled to climb. Guns spent days rebalancing moving radios aft, adjusting trim tabs, redistributing gear. The second test pilot reported it flew like it was angry but stable. Kenny watched a demonstration and approved. The tactic: low-level approach at mast height, strafe to suppress anti-aircraft guns, then skip bomb. Bombs with delayed fuses skipped across water like stones, striking hulls below the waterline. In September 1942, modified A-20s struck Bismarck airfield at treetop level, destroying 14 Japanese planes and silencing AA positions, 0 losses. Gunn's motivation never wavered. Reports from Santo Tomas grew grim: rations cut, medicine scarce, prisoners dying. He flew every mission hoping to advance toward liberation. Holly and the children enjoyed poly-organized camp activities to keep morale up, but her weight dropped steadily. The children suffered chronic illness. Gunn confided to Kenny, "I won't stop until they're free." By late 1942, the A-20s proved the concept, but range limited them. Gunn eyed the B-25 Mitchell for longer strikes. He began planning conversions: more guns, heavier armament. Kenny gave him free rein. This period transformed Gunn from pilot to inventor. Driven by war's necessities and the desperate hope of reuniting his family. By late 1942, the Southwest Pacific Theater had become a graveyard for Allied bombers. The 5th Air Force, under General George C. Kenny, was losing aircraft faster than replacements could arrive. Japanese convoys, reinforced by destroyers and protected by Zero fighters, steamed unmolested from Rabaul to New Guinea, landing thousands of troops at Lae, Finchefane, and Buna. High-altitude bombing, the standard tactic inherited from pre-war doctrine, proved useless against moving ships. B-17 flying fortresses dropping from 20,000 to 25,000 feet scored occasional hits, but most bombs splashed harmlessly into the ocean. When crews descended for better accuracy, Japanese anti-aircraft guns and fighters shredded them. The 3rd Bombardment Group alone had lost 11 A-20 Havocs in July 1940 to trying to hit convoys. Kenny needed a radical solution: bombers that could survive low-level approaches, suppress deck guns, and deliver precise strikes. Pappy Gunn, now a captain in the Army Air Forces and Kenny's Special Projects officer, had already proven the concept with modified Douglas A-20 Havocs, the A-20 Strafer 4. 50 caliber machine guns mounted in the glass nose, replacing the bombardier loud low level. MAST height attacks. Pilots flew at 50 to 200 feet above the water, strafing to kill anti-aircraft crews before releasing skip bombs. These bombs, fitted with delayed fuses, skipped across the waves like flat stones and detonated against ship hulls below the waterline. The tactic worked. September 1942 raids on Buna airfield destroyed Japanese planes and gun positions at treetop level with no losses. But the A-20 had severe limitations. Its range, about 1,000 miles with external tacks, was too short to cross the Owen Stanley Mountains or reach distant convoys. Its bomb load for 500-pounders was light compared to medium bombers. Gunn needed a bigger platform. The North American B-25 Mitchell was the obvious choice. A twin-engine medium bomber, it offered 1,350-mile range, a 3,000-pound bomb load, and a spacious fuselage for modifications. It was already in production, with B-25C models arriving in Australia. Gunn selected a B-25C from the 3rd Bombardment Group and began conversion in December 1940 at Port Moresby and Townsville air depots. The process mirrored the A-20 work, but scaled up. First, Gunn removed the bombardier station and standard 30 caliber nose guns. He installed 4 50 caliber Browning into machine guns in the solid nose, using a welded steel frame to mount them. Each gun weighed 64 pounds, with 200 rounds per gun. The forward weight shift was significant. To add more firepower, he mounted 4 additional 50 calibers in external cheek packs, streamlined fairings bolted to the fuselage sides just behind the cockpit. These cheek guns fired forward through ports, protected by blast tubes to prevent muzzle flash from damaging the airframe. Finally, he rotated the dorsal turret forward, allowing its 50 calibers to fire ahead. Total, 10 forward-firing guns, later expanded in prototypes to 14 by adding more cheek and nose mounts. The armament delivered devastating volume. At 850 rounds per minute per gun, the Strafer could pour out 215 pounds of 50 caliber projectiles per second. Gun tested synchronization to prevent bullets from hitting the propellers. Ammunition belts were rerouted through the fuselage, with extra cans stored in the bomb bay and radio compartment. The plane became a flying destroyer, designed to overwhelm ship defenses in the approach phase, then drop skip bombs or mast height bombs for lethal hits. Testing revealed problems. The added forward weight over 1,000 pounds shifted the center of gravity dangerously nose-heavy. On the first test flight, the B-25 barely climbed, porpoised on takeoff, and nearly nosed over. The pilot had to hold full back pressure on the stick to stay level. Gunn spent 2 weeks rebalancing, moving radio equipment, oxygen bottles and crew gear aft, adjusting tail trim tabs, redistributing fuel and ammunition. He welded blast tubes to extend beyond the propeller rock, preventing skin buckling from muzzle blast. A second test pilot reported the plane flew like it was angry, vibrating and heavy but stable and controllable. Gunn flew the prototype himself, pushing it through mock attacks over the Coral Sea. Ground crews at the 81st Air Depot Group in Townsville worked 18-hour shifts to convert more B-25s. By January 1943, 12 modified strafers were ready. Pilots nicknamed them Pappy's Folly or Commerce Destroyers. Kenny watched demonstrations and ordered immediate deployment. The Strafer tactic, approach at wavetop height in line abreast formation, open fire at 800 yards to suppress AA guns, strafe bridges and decks, then release bombs at point-blank range. Coordinated waves from multiple directions would overwhelm defenses. Word of the modifications reached Wright Field, Ohio, the Army Air Forces Engineering Center. In early 1943, blueprints and photos arrived for review. The engineer's verdict was swift and negative. The conversions were impractical. The nose-heavy balance would cause structural failure under stress. The cheek packs would peel fuselage skin from blast pressure. The added weight exceeded design limits, risking wing failure or poor handling. They recommended grounding all modified B-25s immediately and reverting to standard configuration. Kenny, in Washington from meetings, received the message. Furious, he marched into General Henry Hap Arnold's office, where Wright Field experts waited to explain. Kenny interrupted. "Gentlemen, 12 of your impossible airplanes just destroyed a Japanese convoy in the Bismarck Sea. Every transport sunk. We are converting 60 more in Australia." Arnold sided with Kenny. Ordering the engineers out, the impossible gunships had combat validation. The first real test came in February 1943. Intelligence from Melbourne code breakers from revealed a major convoy operation 81 departing Rabaul. 8 transports, 8 destroyers, nearly 7,000 troops bound for Leh. Kenny had 72 hours. Weather favored the Japanese. Monsoon clouds, rain, poor visibility. But recon planes spotted the convoy March 2nd in the Video Strait. High-altitude B-17s attacked first, claiming hits but sinking nothing. The ships scattered along the New Guinea coast. March 3rd, the low-level strike. IAF Beaufighters strafed to suppress AA. Then Gunn's A-20s and B-25 strafers hit at mast height. The B-25s, with 14 guns per plane across squadrons, formed a wall of fire 300 yards wide. On the transport Kyukase Maru, 50 caliber rounds shredded the bridge and AA crews before bombs skipped in. The ship listed and sank in minutes. Teo Maru tried to flee at 15 knots, for B-25s bracketed it, converging fire killing the bridge crew. Bombs split the hull. It sank in 6 minutes. Destroyers like Asoshio and Shikinomi, trying to screen, were overwhelmed. Strafers silenced guns, bombs crippled engines. By March 4th, the convoy was annihilated, all 8 transports sunk, 4 destroyers down. Japanese losses, approximately 3,000 dead. Only approximately 1,200 troops reached Leh. Allied losses, light 4 aircraft, 13 crew. The Battle of the Bismarck Sea proved Gunn's concept. Japanese sea reinforcement of New Guinea ended. MacArthur called it one of the most complete and annihilating combats of all time. Kenny sent Gunn to California. North American Aviation in Inglewood studied the field mods. Engineers asked for stress calculations. Gunn had none he'd tested by flying. They worried about fuselage buckling. Gunn showed blast tubes as the fix. 2 weeks of reverse engineering produced drawings. The B-25G rolled out in May 1943. Solid nose with 8. 50 calibers and a 75mm M4 cannon tank gun for anti-shipping. The cannon recoiled for feet, shaking the plane. Reloads took 30 seconds. Later B-25H and J models added guns up to 18.50 calibers. Guns work shifted air warfare. Bombers became multi-rule, strafe, skip bomb, close support. His family remained in Santo Tomas Russian's cut. Disease rampant, but every victory brought hope. The Strafer was ready. The war's turning point was at hand. The stage for the Battle of the Bismarck Sea was set in late 1942, as the Japanese Imperial General Headquarters grappled with the deteriorating situation in the Southwest Pacific area. After defeats at Guadalcanal and in the Bunagona area of New Guinea, the Japanese needed to reinforce their garrisons on the north coast of New Guinea, particularly at Leh and Samoa. These bases were vital for defending Rabaul, the major Japanese stronghold in the Bismarck archipelago, and for launching further offensives toward Port Moresby. In December 1942, the Imperial General Headquarters approved Operation 81, a large convoy to transport nearly 7,000 troops, supplies, and equipment from Rabaul to Leh. The convoy assembled at Rabaul in late February 1943. Kenny assembled a massive strike force, B-17 Flying Fortresses and B-20 Liberators for high-level attacks to draw fire and disrupt the convoy. Royal Australian Air Force RAF Bristol Beaufighters for initial strafing runs to suppress anti-aircraft guns, and the core guns modified A-20 Havocs and B-25 Mitchell Strafers from the 3rd, 38th, and 43rd Bombardment Groups. The plan: high bombers first to force Japanese gunners to look upward, then low-level attackers in waves at mast height 50 to 200 feet to strafe decks and bridges, followed by skip bombs. Guns B-25s, with up to 14 forward firing, 50 caliber guns per aircraft, would provide the overwhelming firepower to neutralize defenses. Pilots from the 90th, 38th and 3rd Bomb Groups trained on the new tactics, One practice mission was almost had flown with the Strafer configuration. The convoy departed Rabaul on February 20th. 1943, under Rear Admiral Masaotomi Kimura. It sailed into columns, transports in the center. Destroyer screening. Weather was as expected, overcast, rain squalls. On March 1st, the convoy hugged the coast of New Britain to avoid open sea detection. Allied reconnaissance PBY Catalinus and B-17 spotted it late on March 1st. But bad weather prevented immediate attack on March 2nd. AB-17 from the 43rd Bombardment Group located the convoy in the Video Strait, high altitude. B-17s attacked through cloud breaks, dropping 137 bombs. Planes were optimistic multiple hits, but post-battle analysis showed only one transport damaged, possibly Kyokusei Maru. No ships sank. The Japanese pressed on, scattering at night along the New Guinea coast for cover. March 3rd dawned with clearing. Weather crucial for the low-level strike. At 0600, the Allied force assembled over Cape Ward Hunt. Papua New Guinea. 137 aircraft total. RAF Beaufighters led, flying low to strafe the convoy's anti-aircraft positions. The Japanese opened fire with 25mm and 13mm guns as the Beaufighters roared in. But the twin-cannon attackers raked decks, killing crews. Then the main force arrived. 30 modified A-20s and 12 B-25 Strafers, led by Lieutenant Colonel Brian A. Benny Griffin and others. The B-25s came in line abreast at wavetop height, 240 knots, 14 guns blazing per plane. Guns modification shown. The 50 caliber streams walked across water like chainsaws, hitting superstructures, shredding bridges, and mowing down AA gunners before they could traverse on the transport Kyokusei Maru. Japanese lookouts spotted the attackers at 2 miles. The captain ordered hard turn to starboard, but too late. B-25s opened fire at 800 yards. Rounds raked the bridge, killing officers. 3 B-25s released skip bombs at 100 yards. One hit the hull below waterline, exploding in the engine room. Others struck amidships. Kyokusei Maru was dead in the water within 30 seconds. Burning and listing. It sank in under an earth transport. Teo Maru tried to flay at full speed, 15 knots. 4 B-25s bracketed it from both sides, converging. 50 caliber fire silenced AA guns and shattered the bridge. The executive officer and captain were killed in bursts. 8 bombs dropped, 5 hit. The ship broke in half. Japanese soldiers below decks drowned as compartments flooded. It sank in 6 minutes. Survivors jumping overboard in full gear. Many dragged under by packs. Destroyers attempted to screen. Asashio rescued survivors, but was caught focused on operations. 3 A-20s attacked from different angles. Bombs hit forward deck and bridge. Asashio burned through the night, sinking at dawn March 4th. Shikinami faced RAF Beaufighters and B-25s. Its AA hit one Beaufighter, but the Australian pilot pressed on, raking the deck. B-25 bombs crippled it. Crew abandoned ship hours later. By 0900 March 3rd, the convoy was scattered across 40 square miles, 5 transports sinking or burning. 2 destroyers crippled. The remaining ships tried to reach Leh. Strafers returned at 1400 with fresh ammunition and bombs. No Japanese fighter cover Zeros had landed at Leh to refuel. Ogawa Maru took 12 bomb hits. Its magazine detonated in a massive explosion visible from Port Moresby 130 miles away. No wreckage or survivors. Captain Benny Griffin in a B-25 Strafer led attacks on Ojimamo and others. His co-pilot countered fires across decks. Japanese soldiers jumped overboard. Bombs hit point blank. The transport capsized. Modified A-20s hunted crippled destroyers like Yukikaze and Hatsuyuki. which tried rescue operations but were overwhelmed. By evening March 3rd, the convoy was destroyed. March 4th mop-up. PT boats and surviving aircraft sank stragglers. Final tally. All 8 transports sunk. 4 destroyers sunk or Soshiu. Toketsukas, Yukikoze damaged, but later scuttled or sunk. 1 destroyed damaged. The victory validated low-level tactics. Strafing suppressed defenses. Skip bombing scored whole hits. Guns B-25s, once impossible, became standard. The 5th Air Force shifted doctrine bombers as multi-role weapons. Gunn returned to combat. Briefly, but the battle marked the turning point. His family's captivity continued Russian scarce. Disease rampant, but every Allied advance brought hope closer. The victory at the Battle of the Bismarck Sea in March 1943 marked a profound shift in the Southwest Pacific campaign. Japanese sea reinforcements to New Guinea ceased. Future supplies arrived in small barges, submarines, or overland, vulnerable to Allied air power. General George C. Kenny wasted no time capitalizing on the success. On March 5, 1943, he sent a message to General Henry Hap Arnold in Washington. 12 B-25 strafers destroyed entire Japanese convoy. Request immediate factory integration of forward gun package into all B-25 production aircraft. Arnold, convinced by the combat results, ordered North American Aviation to incorporate Pappy Gunn's modifications. Kenny summoned Gunn to California. The 43-year-old captain, still officially a Navy veteran, outcommissioned in the Army Air Forces, reluctantly left Australia. His family remained interned at Santo Tomas in Manila. Every mission had been flown with the hope of drawing closer to their liberation. Going to the United States felt like moving backward, but Kenny made it an order. The 5th Air Force needed hundreds of factory-built strafers, not field hacks. Gunn arrived in Long Beach on March 27, 1943. North American Aviation's Inglewood plant sprawled across 140 acres, employing 20,000 workers on 3 shifts. 1 B-25 rolled off the line every 4 hours. Factory engineers examined Gunn's hand-drawn blueprints, pencil sketches on yellowed paper. No formal stress calculations. No wind tunnel data. They asked probing questions. How had he calculated fuselage loads? What about recoil stress on cheek mounts? Gunn's answers were pragmatic. I tested it by flying. When engineers warned of skin buckling from muzzle blast, Gunn pointed to the blast tubes he de-welded on simple extensions that directed gases safely past the propeller arc. The factory team spent 2 weeks reverse engineering the field mods into production drawings. The result, the B-25G, first rolled out May 10th. 19 for a 3-dot. It featured a solid nose with 8 50 caliber guns and a 75mm M for a cannon, the same as in the M3 lead tank. The cannon fired 1 round every 30 seconds. The navigator manually reloaded between shots. The aircraft shuddered violently when the cannon recoiled for a feat. Gunn test flew the prototype, confirming it worked for slow-moving ships. Subsequent B-25H added 4 more guns in improved cheek packs and a better recoil system, 1 round every 20 seconds. The B-25J removed the cannon for a lighter weight, adding 4 more. 50 calibers, 18 forward-firing guns total, the most heavily armed production bomber in history. North American built for 100 B-25Gs, hundreds Os, and nearly 5,000 Js. Gunn's concepts spread. Mediterranean theater strafers targeted German convoys. CBI theater B-25s hit Burma road supply lines. Gunn returned to Australia in May 1943, exactly 6 weeks later. The Strafer program accelerated. In April 1943, B-25s destroyed 16 Japanese barges near Finchafane. In May, They sank 12 cargo ships at WWII Harbor. By June, all facilities at Balikpapan, Borneo, burned under Strafer attacks. Japanese commanders called the B-25's Black Death. They adapted, moving supplies at night, but strafers learned radar-guided attacks and coordinated with PT boats for illumination. In November 1943, Major Benfridge led 59 B-25s into Rabaul Harbor, 137 aircraft total. In 15 minutes, 30 Japanese ships were hit, 5 sank outright, 12 damaged beyond repair. Gunn flew that mission at age 44, despite staff rank. Through 1944, Strafer tactics evolved. Some carried 5-inch rockets, napalm tanks, or parafrag bombs, small fragmentation bombs with parachutes for low-level drops without self-damage. Combined strikes became standard. High B-24S bombed to force defenders upward, then strafers hit low. In the first 8 months of 1944, 5th Air Force strafers destroyed 947 Japanese aircraft on the ground, sank 273 ships, and killed an estimated 38,000 enemy soldiers. Gunn added modifications, auxiliary fuel tanks for extended range, improved gun cooling, faster reloading techniques. Some Pacific B-25s had unique gun inventions field mods done overnight before missions. Gunn flew multiple missions daily, driven by family reports from Santo Tomas, rations cut, medicine scarce, prisoners dying. The Japanese camp commander warned via Red Cross that prisoners would be executed if Allies approached. Gunn told Kenny he wanted to fly the first mission over Manila during liberation. Kenny promised. On November 27, 1944, Japanese Betty bombers raided Tacloban airfield at 0330. 56 aircraft attacked low from the north. Gunn was in the operations tent reviewing plans when bombs hit. Shrapnel tore through canvas. Fragments struck his left leg, severing an artery and shoulder. Blood soaked his flight suit. The medical officer found him trying to stand. Gunn insisted on checking his aircraft. He collapsed after 30 feet. Evacuated to Light Hospital, surgeons repaired the artery. The wounds qualified him for a medical retirement, 45 years old, 26 years service, Navy and Army. Gunn refused, not until my family is free. The Battle of Manila began February 3, 1945, U.S. Forces fought house to house through the city. Japanese defenders declared Manila a fortress. Santo Tomas was liberated the same day by the 1st Cavalry Division. Troops stormed the gates, internees cheered. Gunn bandaged leg, using a cane flew to Manila February 4th against orders. At the makeshift hospital, Polly didn't recognize him at first. He'd lost 40 pounds, hair grey. She thought he was a doctor. When he said her name, she knew. The reunion lasted for hours. Holly weighed 89 pounds, daughter Julia 63. Sons Nathaniel malaria and the youngest dysentery were ill, but alive after 3 years. Official reports, Colonel Paul I. Gunn reunited with family February 4, 1945, at Santo Tomas. Gunn returned to Light. Medical leave continued, but he advised on Strafer ops. By war's end, 9,600 B-25s built, merely 5,000 Strafer variants. They sank over 800 Japanese ships, destroyed 2,000 aircraft on ground, killed approximately 85,000 soldiers. Gunn never flew combat again. Retired full Colonel June 30, 1948, medical disability, age 48. Post-war, Gunn rebuilt Philippine Airlines. Starting with 3 surplus C-47s in 1946, he expanded routes, Manila-Cebu, then international to Hong Kong, Bangkok, Singapore. By 1956, PAL flew to San Francisco with Convair 340s and DC-6 South. The Philippine government awarded him the Distinguished Service Star in 1947. President Manuel Roxas presented it personally. U.S. Decorations to Distinguished Flying Crosses, Silver Star, Legion of Merit, Air Medal, 9 Purple Hearts. MacArthur recommended Brigadier General in 1945, denied due to force reductions. Gunn never complained his family was free. Philippines liberated, Japan defeated. In the 1950s, Gunn flew constantly Manila to Cebu, Cebu to Hong Kong, and all to standstill. Wartime movement equaled survival. Some pilots said he was still outrunning memories. Santo Tomas lost crews. North American hired him as consulting engineer in 1948. He advised on B-45 Tornado jet bomber gun mounts. He donated earnings to veterans. On October 10, 1957, Gunn chartered a Beechcraft Model 18 from Manila to Baguio routine 140-mile flight. Weather forecast scattered thunderstorms over Cordillera Mountains. He filed at 0820, takeoff at 930. Storms worsened faster than predicted. Radio silent at 10:47. Wreckage found 3 days later on a mountainside near Baguio crashed into a storm cell. Winds drove into ridge. Instant death for all aboard. Gunn was 57-58 in a week. State funeral in Manila. 6,000 attended veterans, PAL employees, Santo Tomas survivors. General Kenny sent wreath. Manila Times headline: War hero dies in plane crash. Obituaries noted Bismarck Sea, strafers, but not the full impact. Legacy: Gunn's concepts influenced AC-130 gunships, A-10 Warthog. He proved bombers could be multi-role weapons. Inducted into Arkansas Aviation Hall of Fame 2008. Son Nathaniel flew B-52s in Vietnam. Retired colonel. Wrote Pappy Gunn 1994. PAL thrives today 40 to destinations. Pappy Gunn story. From Arkansas boy to Navy chief, civilian pilot, wartime innovator, family man. One mechanic's determination changed war. His family free, Philippines liberated. Enemies defeated, that was enough.